All right, let's get into it. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the biggest gambling market in the world. And spoiler alert, the real money isn't made by the casinos you see on the postcards. Nope, it's made by a shadow banking system that runs on a very special kind of currency.
Okay, first things first, just look at these numbers. To say Macau's gaming revenue beats the Las Vegas Strip, that's a huge understatement. It completely, utterly dwarfs it. We're talking multiples larger. The scale is just, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, honestly. And it brings up a really big question.
I mean, seriously, how is that even possible? It's not like they just build a few more casinos. The answer? Well, it lies in a totally different and, frankly, a far more ruthless financial system that's humming away right under the surface. So to really get a handle on Macau's impossible numbers, you kind of have to forget everything you think you know about how high-stakes gambling works. This whole thing is built on a really clever, really unique regulatory loophole.
So you probably think the big casinos, the famous ones, are the ones handing out credit to the high rollers, right? Well, if you think that, you're missing the single most important piece of the puzzle. In Macau, the casino, it's often just the stage. The real bank is someone else entirely.
So who is this mystery bank? Well, they're called junket operators. And you got to get the image of a simple tour guide out of your head. These people are sophisticated financiers, they're debt collectors. They are the absolute key to Macau's entire financial engine. They exist to fill a void that the casinos themselves just couldn't.
Yeah, and this slide really lays out the difference perfectly. In the Western model, it's simple. The casino gives you a line of credit. Done. But in Macau, you've got this huge hurdle, strict capital controls. That means wealthy players from mainland China can't just move millions of dollars out of the country. So, who steps in? The junket operator. They basically become a private, off-the-books bank, giving these players all the money they need to gamble.
Okay, but wait a minute. How do these junkets control all that money? More importantly, how do they guarantee they get paid back? Well, they don't use cash and they don't use regular casino chips. They use something way more ingenious, a special kind of currency designed for one thing and one thing only: control.
And the process itself is actually deceptively simple. Here's what happens. The junket gives a player these things called dead chips. Now, the player has to gamble with them. You can't just go to the cage and cash them out. But here's the clever part. When they win a bet, the casino pays them out in regular, cashable chips. It's a brilliant one-way street for money.
But here's the most crucial part. These dead chips are basically a tracking device. Because every single dollar of credit has to be played at the table, the junket knows exactly how much the player is betting in total, what they call the roll, and that lets them calculate their commission with, perfect accuracy.
All right, so the junket provides the credit, and they've got this foolproof system to track their commission. Sounds great, right? But what happens when the player loses? And I mean loses big and owes millions? This, my friends, is where the system shows its teeth. And let me tell you, it has nothing to do with courts or legal contracts.
And this comparison here says it all. In the US, if you owe a casino money, they take you to court. It's a civil matter. But a gambling marker from Macau, back in mainland China, it's legally worthless. So the junket has to enforce the debt themselves, using methods a casino could never touch. We're talking intense social pressure, high-level intimidation, and the very real threat of completely destroying a person's reputation and their entire business.
And this really gets to the heart of it. The player isn't just gambling with money. They're gambling with their status, their freedom to travel, literally their entire future. For these players, not paying back a junket can mean total social and financial ruin. Now that is one powerful incentive to pay up. Okay, so now that we see how the whole machine works, let's take a look at who the real winner is in this whole arrangement. Because, it's kind of symbiotic. Everyone gets something they want. But make no mistake, one party is very, very clearly in charge.
This chart just lays it out so clearly. You've got the casino, right? They're just providing the fancy venue. They get a nice fee and they take on zero risk. Then you have the player. They get access to these huge lines of credit they could never get on their own. But the junket? The junket is the one providing the cash, absorbing all the risk, and in return for all that, they get a cut of every single bet that gets made.
And what is that cut? It's usually around 1.25%. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds tiny, right? But here's the key. It's 1.25% of the total amount bet, the entire roll, not just what the player loses. When you've got high rollers betting, or rolling, hundreds of millions of dollars in just one trip, well, that tiny percentage suddenly builds a multi-billion-dollar empire.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, what you're seeing isn't just a system for gambling. Not at all. It's a really powerful, really sophisticated form of financial engineering. It was designed from the ground up to exploit a very specific set of rules.
And that's really the perfect way to describe it. The whole junket system is a masterclass in what's called regulatory arbitrage. It's all about finding that little gap in the rules, in this case the gap between Macau's casinos and China's capital controls, and then building a massively profitable industry right inside that gap.
So let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. The whole system, it exists for one reason: to get around China's capital controls. The dead chips are the clever tool they use to track their commission. The debts, they're collected through the fear of social ruin, not through the courts. And the most important thing to remember is that the junket, the shadow banker, is the true power player here, not the casino.
And that kind of leaves you with a final, pretty interesting thought, right? This whole model where financing the action is actually more profitable than the action itself. That's not just a Macau thing. So it makes you wonder, where else do we see this happening? In the tech world? Real estate? Maybe even sports? It's a fascinating way to look at the world of high finance, for sure.